And we are live. How's it going, Mets fans? It's your boy Wardy, and we are back at it with our latest breaking news live show as the New York Metropolitans have inked former Yankee, now New York Met. I know you Mets fans love to hear that. Another Yankee has been, but of course, it is Harrison Bader, one of the best defensive outfielders in all of baseball, has plenty pop in his bat when he is right, but the big issue with Harrison Bader the past couple of years has been his health and his consistency. So we're going to get into why did the Mets make this signing? Where is Harrison Bader likely going to profile in this lineup for the 2024 season? Are there more moves offensively on the horizon for the club? And so much more is what we're about to deep dive. But to everyone first chiming in the live show, people on replay, thank you all so much for being in here. And please do me a favor by smashing that like and subscribe on for your boy. It's the easiest and best way to support the channel. Donations, of course, are greatly appreciated when we have a live concurrent viewer chat. I'm answering questions, but of course it is never needed. And seriously, thank you all so much for being in here. I have a lot to say about this move with Harrison Bader. There are aspects to it which I certainly do like, and there are aspects to it which I don't like that I'm going to emphasize. So for all the Mets fans out there that, again, find themselves wondering, Wardy, are you ever going to be critical of the club? I have been plenty, and I will continue to, because like I said, I see both sides of the coin here. I can understand the Mets' perspective as to why they made this move, but I can also understand the initial fan reaction and why it could be a turnoff to some, knowing that there is still uncertainty heading forward this season. But again, I appreciate everyone first coming in, guys. We're going to get into the numbers of Harrison Bader. Newsflash, the past season or so, they aren't great because the guy hasn't stayed healthy, and when he has been on the field, he's been a big swing and miss offensively. So we're going to get into right now everything you need to know. Of course, shout out to my great friends at BetUS for being the sponsor of today's video, but a little bit more on them later in the show. Icy Blacklist Outdoors, great friend of mine. How you doing? Long time no see. Very happy to have you in here. Brennan, Edward, Jimmy, JT, Ricky and Sandy, Dominic, Michael, let's see, Evan, Hansel, Fosto, Juan, all you guys, Malone, Jason, Bruce, everyone first chiming in live and on replay. Happy to have everybody in here. Greatly appreciate. You guys know the drill. If you're new to the channel as well, we're your number one stop for all things Mets news, rumors, post-game shows, pre-game shows, which we'll be introducing more in 2024 this year, and so much more. Again, happy to have you guys in here. But now let's talk about this move. Okay, so of course, your boy woke up a little bit late today. I kid you not. I got up today because I was up pretty late. I got up today, I don't know, a quarter to, actually right around 11. Got up, went to use the bathroom, went back in my bed, and I was like, you know what, don't go to bed yet. I checked my phone, and what happens, Patrick Hennessy, my co-host for the Bridging the Gap podcast, where it's a Mets and a Yank fan perspective on New York baseball, he just texts me in all caps, ha, 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 ha. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, the Mets signed a Yank. That was my first reaction. And then I see everyone's tagging me. The Mets have signed Harrison Bader. So Harrison Bader, who is Harrison Bader? Well, many of you guys know Harrison Bader. And there's one person who I know is very happy about this move, probably more than anyone in the Mets organization right now. It is Harrison Bader's former teammate during their time at Florida, none other than Pete Alonso. So look, I don't know, you could connect the dots a little bit. Bader does make a lot of sense for the team on what they need right now still, but you can also say, hey, you know, try to make Pete a little bit happy. I don't know if this is going to lead to some extension talks. Of course, I don't know if this is going to lead to much, but if you can keep the polar bear happy, I think that is a good sign, and this helps in that regard as he's a former teammate of his. But as we look at the numbers here for Harrison Bader, guys, they leave a bit to be desired. We all know this. This past season played in 98 games. Again, I felt like he was playing in Double-A just as much as he was playing at the major league level because the guy couldn't stay on the field too much, or he was inconsistent. 7 bombs, 40 RBIs, 20 stolen bags for Harrison Bader. That's an emphasis I'd like to make clear here. Harrison Bader is going to come into this lineup. He'll be batting right towards the bottom. Think of Mark Canha when he was batting bottom in the order as well, but you have more speed here. You have truly elite defense, and that's something that I really want to highlight here, guys, when evaluating. Harrison Bader is someone that the Mets sign because this is the David Stearns philosophy of preventing runs. Run prevention has been a heavy emphasis for David Stearns this offseason. The Mets, newsflash, guys, have been one of the worst overall defensive teams in baseball each and every year for the past number of years. You want to know what the Milwaukee Brewers have been? A top 5 team every single year throughout David Stearns' tenure with the Milwaukee Brewers, right? So not only great pitching staffs that he's helped build, but also being defensively sound. So if, say, you don't have the sexiest names in your rotation on paper, you want to make sure you have guys that can help prevent runs. And what has Harrison Bader done the past couple seasons? Well, let's just look, all right? His last 3 seasons defensively and his percentile at center field, 95th percentile, 91st percentile, 99th percentile. Harrison Bader is so good defensively to the point where I firmly believe the Mets will consider toying Brandon Nimmo at times in left field and starting Bader at center. He has that much range. He has that much speed. And we all saw just a year and a half ago what he was able to do in playoffs when it mattered most in his first year with the Yanks after being dealt there from the St. Louis Cardinals. The guy was a home run machine when no one else was stepping up for the Yanks in that playoff run. Harrison Bader was that one exception. So when it comes to performing in playoffs when it matters most, Harrison Bader has that dog in him. He has a defensive dog in him. What does he not have? He doesn't have the consistency we've seen so far at the MLB level with the power. He's shown flashes of brilliance where he'll just go on a run and hit like 3 nukes at least in the week, and then you won't hear anything of him for the next month plus. It's bizarre with Harrison Bader. He's another one of these guys that, again, has struggled to find consistency in his offensive game. And it isn't all that long ago when I was talking about Harrison Bader during his time with the St. Louis Cardinals, I'm like, wow, he's a guy I really wouldn't mind in Queens during his time with St. Louis. Things have definitely changed since then. He is not nearly as sexy of a pickup as what he would have been a couple years ago, and it's unfortunate to say, given the fact that he's only 29 years of age. But here's the reality, everybody. Here is why the Mets did the signing, aside from everything that I told you. This is a move the Mets made, specifically, in my opinion, knowing that a Drew Gilbert could be utilized at some point this season. Drew Gilbert, Mets' top outfield prospect acquired in the Justin Verlander trade last season, will be starting the season in AAA more than likely. It's not going to take him long to get to the bigs from there because many people that have played professional baseball will tell you AA is usually more difficult than AAA because AA is where you have a lot of the young stars that are really trying to showcase themselves, whereas AAA, you have this mix of course, young stars trying to break out, but a lot of quad A players where they're too good for AAA, but not nearly good enough for the MLB level. So they're stuck in this like baseball purgatory, if you will. So I truly do not believe Drew Gilbert's going to be in the minor leagues all year, and it wouldn't shock me if he's caught up in the first 3-4 months of the season. And in that scenario, depending on where the Mets stand leading up to the MLB trade deadline, especially if they are sellers, not that I wish that they are, I'd like to make that clear. I pray that they will be buyers by the sellers, but buyers by the deadline. But especially if they aren't, and Drew hasn't been caught up yet, Bader's going to get shipped out for whatever you can get for him. Then you bring up Gilbert. Might happen sooner, might happen later. All I know is that this is another short-term option, similar to the Marcanas of the world, if you will. Not similar in the sense of contactability and getting on base because they are polar opposite, but similar in the sense that you acquired a short-term outfield option. But what does Bader have that, again, Mark Cannon never did? It was elite defense and elite speed. Harrison Bader in the bottom of this lineup is going to easily steal you 25, 30, 40 bags even. It all depends on how much he plays this season. Again, he had 20 stolen bags in not even 100 games. Let's also not forget Starling Marte had 23 stolen bags last season when, I'm sorry, do we even remember Starling Marte playing last year for anything notable? No, you don't. Speaking of Marte, he also hit a single yesterday in Dominican Winter League and did not limp or look like he was in any pain heading down to first base. So that is a plus. I'm not saying we should be banking on Starling Marte now, but hopefully the guy's healthy, because that would do wonders for this team this season. But what I will say this about Harrison Bader, a couple more things that are appealing to him, and then we're going to get into more of the cons. Like I said, I am going to have the devil and the angel on my shoulders. I'm going to speak from the angel point of view, why the Mets did this move and why I understand it, and what I can agree with, and then we're going to get to the devil point of view, the more fan reaction, the frustration, and ultimately what it may mean for the Mets going forward. Because I know it's certainly not a sexy name like a Teoscar Hernandez. This also eliminates the Mets' opportunity. We all knew it was slim to none. The Mets are not signing Jorge Soler, okay? And this is another further reason why. Even though he profiles best as DH, he is a guy that can still be toyed in the corner. This further eliminates that potential, in my opinion, until proven otherwise. Again, it seems like anyone past a 2-year deal this offseason in the free agent market, the Mets are really not even considering too heavily. And even then, it seems like that they're refraining from going in bidding wars for some guys because they want to know what they have internally with their team. This is a lot of what we heard heading into the offseason, but I think it's a little bit more of a tougher pill to swallow, because even though that we did hear these things, it was easy to push things aside a little bit during the Yamamoto sweepstakes, because Yamamoto had you feeling like, okay, if we can land him, then we are most certainly putting our right foot forward for 2024 and beyond. The fact that that didn't happen doesn't really change the direction for the club in addressing other areas like outfield that you see here with Bader, but it still puts a different viewpoint and a different name from the average fan on how to view the Mets right now. And I can understand that completely. $10 million, what a joke. No one's complaining about the dollars. I'm sorry. No one should be complaining about the dollars. It's a 1-year deal. I'll be the first to tell you that. I was the same person who advocated I wasn't even against Lucas Giolito at 19 mil just because of how inflated the market is and knowing it's short term. If it was 3, 4, 5 years, I have an issue. But 1 or 2 years, it's not your money. It ain't going to impact the club in the sense where the Mets aren't going to be able to spend in other areas. So I don't know why that personally would phase you, but that's just my opinion. A couple more things I want to highlight about Harrison Bader. I want to give a big shout out because Matthew Brownstein on Twitter first mentioned this. And that was Harrison Bader also hits left-handed pitching very well. A career 824 OPS against Southpaws and a 936 OPS against them in 2023. Why does that stand out to me? The Mets finally have a right-handed hitter who knows how to hit a lick against lefties. Maybe Pete Alonso can learn something. I love Pete, but Pete has fluctuated so heavily against Southpaws. I mean, Andrew Heaney, fastball up, slider in, sayonara, you're out of here. That was Pete Alonso a couple years ago. This past season, Pete wasn't any better against lefties for the most part. Against, if it's garbage time later in the game against has-been relievers, sure. But most southpaws the Mets have faced since I've started covering the Mets, the best hitters the Mets have had in their lineup are lefty hitters in Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo. That drastically needs to change, and I love the fact that the Mets at least brought someone in where even if he doesn't have a tremendous amount of pop, even if he doesn't have a tremendous amount of offensive tools aside from great speed and, of course, contact ability at his best, he kills it against lefties. And that is something where if you look at him in the bottom of the order especially, that could be clutch for this Mets team in many scenarios this season. And the fact that Pete Alonso has been one of the worst hitters in this Mets lineup against lefties tells you how important it is for the Mets to address that area of need. So this goes beyond the defensive attributes that someone like Bader has and the elite speed that he has. Again, tremendous runner, tremendous defender. You're only getting that for fans that want a little bit more context on this. This is Mike Lay Taylor with a little bit less pop and not as healthy. This is what this is, pretty much. But also really strong speed, great base runner. There are aspects to like here. But what I personally do not like about this acquisition of Harrison Bader is the fact that I would have loved if the Mets could have tried to figure out a different route. I know it wasn't easy because it was clear that David Stearns in the outfield market was still looking for short-term options. Let's not forget, he was this close, and I heard this from people in the industry. The Mets and the Tampa Bay Rays were this close to acquiring Manuel Margot like over a month ago. It didn't happen. Margot ended up being part of that bigger deal to the LA Dodgers. Margot would have been like a platoon bench bat for the Mets at the time. They then bring in Tyrone Taylor that we see. Tyrone Taylor, I think, is going to get a decent amount of playing time. I'm sure he's going to have times where he's splitting a little bit with Bader based on matchups, and also for the sake of Bader, keeping him healthy. Think Mark Canha, Travis Jankowski. That's the vibes that I'm getting here. But instead of Mark Canha, Travis Jankowski, it's Harrison Bader, Tyrone Taylor, who, aside from the lack of contact and on-base ability with these guys, I do like the ability that they have on the defensive end far more, the speed on the bags, and also their ability to have pop at times when it is needed, and not enough, but hopefully in stretches when you're looking for it most. But they tried for Alex Verdugo. I don't know how much interest the Mets had in Alex Verdugo. I just know that they were a Final Four team in trying to acquire him via trade. Alex Verdugo is a great gap-to-gap lefty hitter, one of the better ones in baseball, but he's pretty much a league average player. He's not an elite defender. He's not an elite hitter or anything like that. Average through WRC plus, OPS plus. He's pretty much an average player the past couple years in his career. Harrison Bader, below average this past season because of his lack of health and consistency. 70 percentile in WRC plus, which means the average is 100. He was at 70. So let that explain it. However, in his career, he's just below the average hitter. Again, with Harrison Bader, you're really not looking for as much offensive upside, even though we've seen his stretches of brilliance, as you're looking for far more, in my opinion, about all the defensive attributes and all these aspects that he brings. Professional certified hater, thank you so much for the donation. Never seen a fan base so mad over a 90th percentile defender for only $10 million. I hate being a part of this fan base. Bunch of expected batting average and Twitter merchants. I know. I appreciate the donation. I do. Here's the thing. 4 items in P.O. Box, including new one tomorrow. Dave, I love you. Thank you so much. Dave, I kid you not, because I saw your most recent email. I've just been waiting because I've been going back and forth, Dave, to my PO box every time I go there because they close fairly early, and usually there's this one worker that stays a little late. She hasn't been for the past like month plus. It's been frustrating because I've been trying to get the stuff. So I'm gonna try to do that again, Dave. As a matter of fact, I'll even try to do that after I'm done with today's live show. So I appreciate that, my man. Happy to have you in here. But I want to get to everyone's initial comments, questions, and concerns. I want to see how you guys are feeling in the poll right now in the live show. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button for your boy. Greatly appreciated. We have north of 700 concurrent viewers in here. If you could help us get to 200 to 300 plus likes by the end of the live show, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much in advance. And I find myself along a similar wavelength out of, 430 plus votes so far in the poll, if not north of 500 because it's going up fast. 34% of you guys love this move for the Mets. 23% say not a fan personally, want more. 44%, and I find myself in this category more, not sure how to feel yet. I know, that's like Mets fans in a nutshell. We're not sure how to feel because this is a move that just happened. And again, I see the upside here. I see what David Stearns is doing. I guess for me, from the fan point of view, this team still needs more power. Are you going to land JD Martinez or Justin Turner? Because if you're not going to do that, and we're going to roll a Mark Vientos and DJ Stewart this season, I'm going to be the first to tell you, I don't love that. I like the idea of giving Mark Vientos a leash. That is something I would like to make clear. I've always had a soft spot for Mark Vientos. However, I think there's an argument to be had that you should go out and get one of these short-term options, either keep Mark Vientos in AAA during the season until his trade value goes up because he's going to kill it in AAA again, or trade him away even though he's at a fairly low value now. Vientos, I just struggle to see if he truly has a future in the organization. I know it's imperative for David Stearns as a new president of baseball operations to see what he has in the club. And that's what all 2024 is about. It's by trying to compete for playoffs, but more than anything, it's him trying to get a familiarity on who's here, what works, and what doesn't. And Mark Vientos, unfortunately, because of his lack of usage, I mean, the guy, let's not forget, was called up last year. I was in attendance at that game against the Tampa Bay Rays. He hits a nuke to tie the game. The Mets go on to win in extras. It was a crazy one. And then he doesn't start at DH the next, week. It was ridiculous. Billy Epler and Buck Showalter were getting their freaking panties in a twist on who's going to start Daniel Vogelbach or not, right? So Vientos is the one where I can understand why to give a bit more of a leash, consistent reps, being your everyday DH, because he's a guy that could impact you beyond 2024, which does fit the Mets bill, their vision, what they're trying to do here. But at the same time, this team seriously needs more power. They seriously need more offense. At least one competent bat at the DH position will suffice. Could they have that internally? Possibly. They could surprise us and prove us wrong. But personally, as a fan, I would much prefer if the Mets opt and go out of their way to try to land one of the players. I know JD Martinez feels like he's an outside looking in option, not only because, one, how much desire does he have to come here, but two, it appears the Mets don't even want to get in a bidding war for someone like him, knowing that he's just a short-term fit. Justin Turner, where do things stand there? It was over 2 weeks ago we heard you were talking to the guy. You still talking? You not interested? Let us know. So that's where I personally stand when evaluating these Mets moves. I like that this doesn't prevent the Mets from adding to the DH position still. But if the Mets do not add to the DH position still, I'm sorry. I still have to cover the club this season at the end of the day. And that's so much uncertainty to that point where I personally am going to be scratching my head. And I'm going to want to know why. Is it because the other guys that they're pursuing didn't have interest in coming here? Is it because of the fact that, Ricky Rubio just announced his retirement from the NBA? That was very out of left field. I did not expect that one whatsoever. Ricky loved torching up my New York Knicks. If you know, you know. Getting back to the topic here, though. I want to know again how you guys are feeling about this. Really, really do. Let's see, because so you guys, let me ask you this, okay? Let me ask everyone first time in the chat. I'm watching a replay right now. If you guys have been watching since the show has started, do you at least understand the pros and the cons here, everything that I explained to you? Because I pretty much hit the nail on the head with everything. I'm not trying to act cocky. I'm just, we figured out pretty much everything as to why the Mets made this move, and we can also figure out why there are rightful criticisms. So I want to know, where do you guys stand? Do you understand both the pros and the cons here? Are you just a heavy emphasis on the cons? You think that this is just going to be a wash signing, there's no point in it? Or do you think that there's plenty of optimism in a move like this, knowing what the Mets are building for this season? Dave, thank you so much for a $5 donation. Dave says, the nicest item gets there tomorrow, Mets hoodie. Get them all tomorrow. Dave, I love you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother. Hype in the chat, as always, to Dave Kaplitz, who's not only a great friend of mine, but truly the most generous and supportive guy you can imagine here on the channel. Thank you so much, as always, my friend. He's an elite defender that doesn't block anyone coming up. He's a placeholder for Gilbert. My point exactly. And that's why I was telling people it wouldn't shock me if the Mets go with a placeholder option. I talked about Adam Duvall. We talked about Michael A. Taylor, even though I view him more so as a fourth outfielder type, that a guy you want starting in left field. But the Mets essentially kind of got that in Harrison Bader to an extent. Albeit Harrison Bader, I think, has more defensive and speed upside. I think Michael A. Taylor has him beat there with the power, even though he's not a high contact hitter. This is an interesting one. The reason I'm not trying to sound, this guy can be so childish at times, enlighten me, optimist. Okay, well, one, I'm 23 years of age. I'm not an old buck, maybe like yourself. However, what I am is someone that tries to stay as informed with the club as possible. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm dumbing you guys down when I'm asking you, do you understand the pros and the cons? The reason why I asked this question is because I could go on and explain everything thoroughly, yet there are still going to be fans that come in here that ignore everything and just say, oh, everything about this movie is fantastic, or everything about this movie is terrible. When in reality, there are truly plenty aspects where you can like it and dislike it. Both of them. I think this is a situation where two can be true at the same time. Let's see. James Alba with the $5 donation said, if this was the play with Taylor and Bader, I'm curious why we weren't in on the small package it took to get Tyler O'Neill. Same speed, more power. Well, Tyler O'Neill, similar to Harrison Bader in the sense where the guys really struggle to stay healthy. But I think the big difference here is that unlike Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader is truly an elite defender. We are talking about one of the best center fielders in Major League Baseball defensively. Tyler O'Neill is anything but on the defensive end. That is why David Stearns truly believes that run prevention is a vital aspect to the club, and I agree with him in that stance. Going through the numbers, seeing everything he did during his time in Milwaukee, seeing how he dressed the rotation, the bullpen on a very small budget, mind you, and the success rate that he had, which was tremendous. Newsflash, guys, the Mets have been an absolutely horrendous overall defensive team for a number of years now. Okay? I know that the pitchers have had some struggles in years past, but the defense doesn't help either, especially when the defense has struggled to the magnitude in which it has in recent years. I mean, I'm sorry. Have you forgotten about Marcano losing the ball on the lights in left field? Have you forgotten about Starling Marte, going 5 steps behind because he's working with like one hip? Have you forgotten about Luis Gourmet forgetting how to actually be an infield wizard last season? The list goes on and on. The point I'm trying to make is defense is continuing to be a priority for this team. David Stearns has proved that with this latest move. And I like, again, that this does not block, this does not prohibit the Mets from still trying to get a power hitter for the DH position. If this was, then it would be a different discussion, in my opinion. And I'm really curious to know what the Mets are going to do at DH, should they do that. But before we even get there, I really just want to highlight for a minute, going through Harrison Bader's Baseball Savant numbers. We're going to do that in a minute. Then we're going to get to our beautiful sponsor on the channel and advance further here in the show. As you guys make sure to smash that like and subscribe on for your boy. To the breaking news that, yes, the Mets have signed Harrison Bader, former New York Yankee, former Cincinnati Red, former St. Louis Cardinal, on a 1-year, $10 million deal for the 2024 season to be a defensive wizard for them, to give Brandon Nimmo some reps in left field, and also to kind of help be that placeholder for potentially a Drew Gilbert top outfield prospect whose expected time of arrival is in fact this season. And Drew Gilbert had a great end to the season last year after being acquired by the Mets at the trade deadline in return for, yes, Justin Verlander. But as we look at Bader's numbers through Baseball Savant in 2023, they are exactly what Harrison Bader was. You're looking at batting run value, 20th percentile. Horrendous. Base running value, 78th percentile. Fielding run value, 93rd percentile. XWOBA, expected batting average, expected slug, average exit velo, barrel percentage, hard hit rate, sweet spot, chase percentage, all horrendous. But K percentage, 81st percentile. So he doesn't strike out a lot, but he has a big hole in his game. You could tell that. He struggles to get on base at a good clip. He doesn't strike out a lot, which is interesting, but he's in the 6th percentile walks percentage. The guy doesn't take his pitches enough, and that's part of the problem. Range, outs above average, 95th percentile defensively. So again, one of the best center fielders in the game. Arm value, 82 percentile. Not the strongest arm, however. It's definitely not a big deal, however. Arm value, I should say, was 82 percentile. My mistake. Arm strength, 91st percentile. Sprint speed, 85th percentile. That is Harrison Bader for you. And as we look, let's take a look here even in 2020, 2021. Yeah, I mean, as I'm looking at the numbers, Harrison Bader, his 2023 season, albeit he was injury plagued, really isn't that far off from what his career has been when I'm really looking at it. It was great to see him steal the bags to the ability that he did this past season, but offensively, that is not going to be a strong suit. It was like he caught lightning in a bottle when he had that great run with the Yanks a couple years ago, playoff-wise. But other than that, there really leaves a bit to be desired on the offensive end. So Harrison Bader, should he be a starting outfielder more often than not for the Mets, he will most certainly be in the bottom of the lineup, or close to. He has to be. I just don't see where he could be anywhere else. Dave Kaplitz, and again, I don't hate the speed. I do not hate the speed up the bottom of the lineup. I do not hate the defense whatsoever, but I do hate the inevitable double play ball. I'm not looking forward to shit like that. Pat Benson with the $5 donation says, what good is elite outfielder when the ball is hit over the fence? Well, here's the thing, Pat. Not all balls are hit over the fence, believe it or not. And a lot of them are hit inside the park. So the ones inside the park, you need to know that you have competent defenders to handle, if not elite. And the Mets just landed an elite one in said category. Yes, home run rates are certainly a thing. And yes, it is something that I firmly believe and hope the Mets address, because they really need to for this team, for their own lineup offensively. Aware yourself, thank you for the donation. I think this is a great move. Lower the payroll and give the kids reps. Give us a lot more options in 2025 to actually go all in. And let's also not forget, too, when evaluating 2025, everybody, a lot of money is coming off the books after this season. That is another thing that comes into play with the Mets mindset on 2025 and beyond from there. So that's what I will leave you with. Dave, not Dave. Well, shout out to you, Dave, as well. But Darren, my man, there he is. Absolute beauty. The best Mets fan you'll ever meet from the UK. Happy to have you in here. Let's see. A hater understands New York Bean from Westchester. Absolutely, yes. I didn't even make note of that. Of course, yes, Harrison Bader is a New York native. I do like the appeal knowing that he understands the New York market and has had massive hits, big moments for the New York Yanks. Why I care about that is not as much for, it's the Yanks that we hate, but more so because it's the New York Yankees, the Bronx, New York, the spotlight on him the entire time, and he had some really nice stretches of brilliance during his time there. If he can handle that market, he most certainly can handle this one and then some. He understands the NL East very well during his time with the St. Louis Cardinals. He has familiarity with some players in the club, highlighted not only by Pete Alonso, but also, to an extent, Carlos Mendoza, Mets' new manager, because he was the bench boss for the Yanks during Harrison Bader's time with the Yankees. So again, there are connections, there are similarities, there is appeal there. But the big thing that stands out to me is, as elite of a defender as Harrison Bader is, I'm just really curious how this is all going to shake up heading into the season. And more so, I think I'm going to be more on board with this move personally, as long as the Mets can land a guy who can give you a lock of 20 bombs at the DH position. I'm not asking for much. Just give me a guy that can be a lock of 20 bombs. Do they have that in DJ Stewart and Mark Vientos? Maybe they do. But regardless, I want them to make sure that they know for certain what they have there. And the issue is that they don't. So that's why we're left with these question marks as to what are they going to do in that regard. Are they going to still address in that regard? Are they not going to? We have yet to find out, even though that they are still very active on that front. As you're very active in the pitching market, as many of you guys have seen as well. If you haven't already, everybody, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button for your boy. It really does mean a lot as we're breaking down the latest in Mets land, as the New York Metropolitans have signed Harrison Bader to a one-year, $10 million deal. Also, make sure to check out our previous content, guys. We came out with 3 forms of content over the past 24, 48 hours. We came out with a top 5 Mets starting pitching targets video. Then we came out with an update video on Mets pitching targets because they have shown interest. And I've been talking to the likes of Hyun-Jin Ryu, Brandon Woodruff, Sean Manaea, and Mike Clevenger. So check out that video. And we expanded on that. And then some. We really got into a lot on just the Mets organization as a whole and what David Stearns is trying to build and the pros and cons to it with my good friend Casey Stern in last night's Mets Free Agent Frenzy live show. So if you haven't seen that either, highly implore you all to do so at some point today after watching this live stream. And again, Thank you all so much in advance. Yeah, we're still sitting right around 45%. So the majority of the people in the live show right now are not sure how to feel regarding this move. I will say this, there is some optimism. There is less people upset about this move than I was expecting heading into it. Not that Harrison Bader is a terrible player or anything like that, but just because I know how fed up Mets fans have been this offseason, where you've had a lot of moves where there's been little substance. And yes, there is substance with this move in Harrison Bader. However, there is not substance in it nearly to the degree as if you signed a guy like a Teoscar Hernandez. And I understand that was wishful thinking probably from the jump, because David Stearns never showed a true willingness to want to go past a couple years for an outfielder. But on the contrary, we didn't really know from the man himself if he was heavily pondering or considering that. Maybe on a shorter term fit, yes, but not at what Tio is likely going to be term wise. Let's see. Chances Alonso gets traded, if not now by the deadline, I'm thinking 70%. I think the chances of the Mets getting traded is of Alonso getting traded is very, very slim. I do not foresee it happening. As a matter of fact, I think the Mets, unless the Mets are free falling so bad by the trade deadline, and Alonso's having his typical Alonso year where it makes more sense than not to trade him away, get as much assets back as possible, and then maybe try to leave things on good terms where you can acquire him in the free agent market again. However, Pete is such an emotional player that I firmly believe if they went the lengths of trying to do something like that, it'll be enough for him to feel like he's being stabbed in the back. Even if they make it abundantly clear by saying, hey, we want to consider trading you because we know we're not going to have the run we were hoping for this season. We love you. We would love to bring you back in free agency, but we think it's most important for the club right now to get as much of a return for you as we can, knowing that you will be a free agent at the end of the season. So we're going to go after you. We are going to rekindle this relationship. Could Pete Alonso be swayed that way? Maybe. But I really think it would be a bridge that burn if he is dealt at any point. So for the Mets and for Alonso, I truthfully believe what's going to happen is he's going to ride throughout the season without an extension. And the Mets are going to try to do a Brandon Nimmo 2.0 situation. Do you bring him back even as a Scott Boras client? You get the big contract done, and Alonso's your first baseman for the next north of a decade. But there's also a possibility that by the Mets allowing Alonso to walk, that he may have interest level elsewhere, but also that the Mets may have interest level elsewhere. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't seem to be acknowledging enough when it comes to this. There are a lot of huge names in the free agent market this upcoming year. And you want to know who highlights the names? It's Juan Soto. If you're the New York Mets, and you know, and you are led to believe, for certain Juan Soto actually has interest in coming here, and it's going to come down to being the highest bidder, but you had to pick between Soto and Alonso, what are you doing? I love Pete to death. There is no denying my love and infatuation with Pete Alonso. I want him to be a New York Met the entirety of his career. I want his number to be retired eventually down the road. I want nothing but the best for Alonso in a Mets uniform. Having said that, though, where would you stand if the Mets find themselves teetering between Alonso or Soto next offseason? That's just a question for you guys to mingle about, answer, have fun with that. It's an interesting one, to say the least. I do see another donation. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate that. Matthew, if this thing will stop being stupid on me. Matthew says, none of you look up the fact that Stearns loves defense. These aren't bad moves. They clearly are looking at players in next year's free agency. And if y'all saw some of those names, you all would be too. Oh, yep. I've looked at the free agent class quite a bit already. And that is exactly why the Mets have been operating in part the way that they have been to this point. It's not the fact that the Mets aren't trying to be competitive this year, but it's more so the fact that they are a team that is aware of the options that are better for them aren't currently out there. I love the clip of Bader going yard against a position player. That's pretty... I know. I didn't even notice that in the highlights. That's a good point. That is pretty funny. I'm actually... Now that I'm looking at the highlights, I think these all just might be his highlights of the Cardinals, but honestly, who cares? Because, who cares? Seriously. They have long-term vision. Yes, they absolutely do. They have since the beginning. Outfield seems more plentiful, though Soto is great. Okay. Acuna, Gilbert, and Jet are going to have to bring excellent excitement this year. Do not bank on Acuna and Jet in particular. Jet Williams, I could see playing his way into a role with the Mets this season as a guy who can play around the infield, elite speed, again, a very, very strong contact hitter. But I think that goes a bit in hand also with how Jeff McNeil looks this season too. That's another one that stands out. There's only one Mets prospect that I have currently at this point in time, among the three that you just listed, that I have an overwhelming sense of confidence in, that he will not only be on the Mets by latest halfway point of the season, but also will be impactful in doing so, and that's Drew Gilbert. Drew Gilbert is the one prospect where I have this level of confidence in saying, yeah, I think we can all see him raking in AAA and being up with the Mets in a couple of months, and then he plays his way into more of a starting role and could really make things interesting by having the depth of a Bader or a Taylor. And then at that point, that's where you could get interesting. Do you want to keep all that depth, knowing you have all these outfield options, or do you want to trade one away and still try to go on a run? Again, David Stearns is going to have his hands full this season. We all know that, as has been the case this entire offseason to this point. But I think for us Mets fans, we all should recognize when evaluating what David Stearns has done. Steve Cohen brought him in to be David Stearns. Steve Cohen did not bring David Stearns in to be someone else. And David Stearns, how he's operated so far this offseason, is all very much in line with what he's accustomed to doing, and which he has found high success rates with very low budgets in doing so. The Mets are not a team where you need to worry about the low budget. They still, of course, are pushing they're still going to be leading baseball there with the luxury tax this season, unfortunately, which it really sucks when you look at the talent on paper and what you're spending, but that's just the reality when you spend big on short-term players and they don't work out. Hence JV, hence Max Scherzer, just to name a few. But the whole point by bringing in David was to maximize his skills. And then the factor of, hey, we have the richest owner in baseball. So you know Yoshinobu Yamamoto that you couldn't even get an interview with as a Brewer? Yeah, we're going to do all we can to land him. And the Mets did all they could to land him. Steve Cohen had the highest offer on the table. It was matched by the Dodgers, and he chose LA because he wanted LA the entire time. He used the Mets like a fiddle, is what it is. If the Mets landed Yamamoto, there's not one Met fan complaining about David Stearns. Not one. And what did David Stearns do wrong in the Yamamoto sweepstakes? Absolutely nothing. He did nothing wrong. It's just unfortunate that the Mets couldn't land him. It is what it is. So, defensively, building a bullpen, building a rotation, where even if you have more B, C, and even D-level guys, if you have enough quality depth there, that is what's going to help get you through the trenches throughout a 162 versus calling up Denny Reyes in the first effing month of the season. These two are not the same. So now as we go back to Harrison Bader a bit, as you see from the stat line down below, we've talked about Bader's savant numbers as well. I actually want to look at Bader throughout his career a little bit as well here, just for a moment. Again, he's been with the Yanks since halfway point of the 2022 season, was the famous return for the Jordan Montgomery trade, which was a huge win by the Cardinals, and, a loss by the Yanks in hindsight. Only playing 86 games in 2022, 5 home runs, 38 runs scored, 30 RBIs, a 250 average, a just under 300 OBP, a 356 slug, a 85 WRC plus. Not great numbers whatsoever, but again, a plus defender with Harrison Bader. And that playoff run, I'm pretty sure Harrison had like 5 home runs that playoff. 4 or 5 at least. Actually, I'm going to look it up right now because I want to make sure I don't misspeak. Bear with me 1 second, everybody. As I do this, again, I want to thank everyone so much for chiming in the live show. As we're breaking down the latest news in Metsland, the New York Metropolitans have acquired Harrison Bader on a 1-year, $10 million deal to help round out their help round out their outfield for the 2024 season, more than likely. Bader brings defense to the Mets, moves Nimmo to left. Mets need a good DH now, and the lineup is set. Still on a discount. Our pitching is sus. Snell could come at a discount. I'm really curious what his market is looking like right now. The Mets may F around and surprise us with a pitching acquisition, but I really think that they're going to land just a short-term option and call it a day from what we're seeing right now. And I'd like to make clear, this is not something that I want per se, but this is just the reality that we're kind of living in given the current options out there, understanding why they don't want to give extra length and extra term and dollars, I should say, to a mid-rotation option like a Montgomery. Imanaga I would absolutely love, but it seems like there's more pessimism than optimism on the Imanaga front right now, and Imanaga has just under a week to sign. Also, you know what? One thing I want to give a quick shout out as well to a couple dope Mets fans. They have their own podcast. I think Shane Son's podcast. I'm forgetting which one of them tweeted it, but they tweeted yesterday like early yesterday, that the Mets are signing someone, and it was a gif of Harrison Bader. So I don't know where they got that intel from, because even these smaller moves, I usually get a little bit of a heads up from people in the industry, just so it can help me kind of prep, because I had to do everything on the fly. I didn't have anything prepped for Bader today, which was honestly shame on me, because realistically, he was that platoon option in the outfield that I should have been considering harder than what I did to this point. But they called it like a day ago, and I feel like they didn't pull that out of their ass, obviously. So shout out to them. I'm gonna have to reach out to them after this, because I'm really curious, like if they just got a little birdie told them, and that ended up being true, or whatever it was. Juan, thank you again for that donation. I appreciate that. But before we go further, guys, I actually have to let you all know about today's video sponsor and our great friends on the channel, that being BetUS. For those that don't know BetUS is America's #1 sportsbook. So if you like doing your overs, your unders, your money lines, your parlays, BetUS has you covered, especially with NFL playoffs around the corner. What are you waiting for? You got to get in on the action today. So do a favor for your boy by clicking the link in the description. That way you get a 125% boost with your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with. It is that easy. I've been working with BetUS, and we're going to be doing some awesome, unique WardyNYM Mets parlays throughout the 2024 season. So if you guys want to get in on that action as well, stay tuned. That's going to be a lot of fun as we head into spring training and then the regular season. But again, if you guys love betting on NFL, NBA, NHL, whatever your heart desires, BetUS has you covered, as they are both safe, secure, and most importantly, reliable. Check out BetUS today. And again, shout out BetUS as always for being a great sponsor on the channel. But everybody, I always that damn show intro always sneaks up on me every time I switch the damn slide. There is not one situation where I switch the slide, and that isn't the case regarding the show intro. But yeah, you look at Bader's numbers there too. I think what is making this most hard to stomach for some Mets fans, not as much myself, but others, comes down to the fact that the past 2 off seasons, the Mets have been in this win now stage, have been made headlines in winter. You know, you could say they've won the off season. In reality, it ended up falling flat on its face. But I think that's part of the problem, right? It's like we were given this hope the past couple of years in a win now stage. The Mets fell short. And last season, they didn't only fall short, they embarrassingly fell short. But having said that all, personally, I really don't hate what the Mets are doing, in large part because they tried something, it didn't work. So we should not try that philosophy again. We should try to build a sustained structure for success. And even if that means 2024 is going to be an underwhelming year for the talent on paper, but can exceed expectations versus, not versus, but can it exceed expectations, what their on-field performance is ultimately going to be, that I'm okay with. What I'm personally going to have a little bit of a gripe about, truthfully, is if, one, they land like Hyun-Jin Ryu as their final rotation spot, and they do not do anything for the DH. If that is how they round out things, aside from the bullpen, I will be pissed off. And I will tell you guys that right now. And I'll let you know. Betting is disgusting. Well, the beauty of it, my friend, is that you don't have to do it. Also, want to briefly touch on this for a second, everybody, because I've had some people go back and forth regarding, when I've had a sponsor on the channel that they, Wardy, I love you, but I'm not a fan of betting. That's okay if you're not a fan of betting, okay? But for the people out there that think that I'm trying to, have a negative impact on people, guys, it's like anything else in life. If we're going to talk about, betting can ruin lives, that goes for anything else, okay? What? Your diet. Let's start there. The average, if you're a constant fast food ingester, you think that's good for you? Just because it's been pedestaled by mainstream media and market doesn't mean it's good for you. Alcohol, same applies. You need to make sure you're disciplined. Your lack of discipline is unfortunate that's the case, but that is not my problem either. So all I say is that if you are one of those people that is not in favor of betting, that's perfectly fine. Just bypass it. That's all you got to do. Just ignore it when I'm doing the ad reads. It's as simple as that. It doesn't impact you. And for the people that are able to be disciplined and just do the normal betting however which way you want, including myself, you go out and do it. There are many people that have problems in life, but there are also many people that can also do these things without there being a problem. And that's why there are the millions of people that do to begin with. And that is what I will leave you regarding that. And no, I'm not going to optimist, but I appreciate the concern. You're saying Subways is not healthy? Who says no? Let's see. This is a wild card team this year. Could win 73, could win 86. This team was never going all in without Yamamoto. It's correct. It's okay. Next year and beyond, this is year will never be the case. Got to have one reset year. That is what Mike K says in the chat. Let's see here. I don't want to miss. There was one comment I didn't want to miss here, and I'm losing it now. And Doug, that's perfectly fine if you disagree. I'm just sharing my opinion on it. That's all. That's all. Let's see. Please God, I hope Snell doesn't come to the Mets. Talk about a pen killer walking the ballpark, giving that's a big part of the reason why I've not been a fan of inking Blake Snell, especially on a long-term deal. I have a lot of reservations with that, and that goes directly in hand with the fact that Blake Snell, even in his Cy Young Award-winning season, which he just had, a big falter in his game is that he's walked everyone and their mother. I watched a bunch of Blake Snell last year because I was watching the Padres a bit more than I usually do because I'm good friends with the Padres fan and Born and Nazari that you guys know at Hogwatch. And while watching plenty of these Snell starts, he'd be texting me saying, look at this one. The guy can be carving up everyone, and then he walks the entire bases loaded. There's just so similar to Josh Hader. Josh Hader strikes at everybody, but he also walks everybody. And he wants a contract bigger than Edwin Diaz? Fuck out of here. You know what I mean? I got no interest in that. Snell, a great talent. It seems like a great guy too, a fun guy. Love his shoe collection. Probably has one of, if not the best shoe collections in all of MLB. If you know, you know. Having said all that, though, as awesome of a talent as he is, he really doesn't fit the Mets timeline right now unless they got him on a far more reasonable contract. And then you're like, damn, we just got an ace caliber pitcher at this price versus what the market has been. Sign me up. But any type of overpay, especially extended, we're talking like past 5 years for Snell, that leaves a lot to be desired to the average Mets fan, including myself, given where they're currently at. Now, if the Mets were all in 2024, and they were all in the way that they were in acquiring the Justin Verlanders and the Max Scherzers, then I think we have a different discussion, but that is not the case here when evaluating someone like Harrison Bader whatsoever. Let's see. I should make a highlight where my intro is interrupted here live stream. That's a good idea. If someone has the audacity to make a montage of every time that my intro just popped up randomly, you know, that would be something else, wouldn't it? Another former Yankee becoming a Met. Yes, that is correct. And I know that there are Mets fans that always hate that. I understand that too. I'd like to make that clear. I understand the fans that don't like the idea of bringing in essentially Yankee has-beens because, you know, not with everyone, but with a decent amount of players, the Mets have had a lack of success on that front. But, you know, the Yanks have done that plenty with former Mets as well. And if there's one thing I will say to that, look, Carlos Mendoza is our manager now. So we shouldn't be acting in that viewpoint because literally our manager is the former bench boss for the Yankees. We have Luis Severino. We have Harrison Bader. I hope we bring back David Robertson. You want to know what happens if you bring back David Robertson? You bring back another Yankee has-been. However, unlike some of these other guys, David Robertson has still been damn good. Very good to this point in his career. A long-time beast of a reliever during his time with the Yanks. Of course, had championship runs with them and everything in between. But even with him being 39, almost 40, he still has that dog in him. And that's why I love the idea of bringing David Robertson back on a one-year deal. Why isn't Vladdy announced in international signings? Because it's not done yet. International signing period doesn't officially begin just yet. It'll begin around January 15th, I believe, is when it officially begins. All right, everybody. But having said that, we are going to wrap up the show in just the next couple minutes. But before I do, I want to ask everybody, what is your biggest takeaway from signing Harrison Bader to this 1 year, $10 million contract? If you love it, tell me a bit more why you love it. If you hate it, tell me a bit more why you hate it. I'm going to try to answer as many comments as I can before we get to wrapping up the show. And Juan, appreciate you for the hype as a great member and a great moderator. Greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Matt Moore and David Robertson would be nice additions. Yes, they would. Unfortunately, I don't foresee the Mets landing both of them, but I would love at least one of them. Let's see. Mets continue to take Yankees leftovers. Yeah, I mean, in that sense, I can't deny it. That's what they did. I guess we can't sign Soto since he will have been a former Yankee. Yeah, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. That's hilarious. That is pretty funny. I like that. Congrats on the baby. Thank you so much, Tingus. I really appreciate that. Yes, they are expensive, so I'm going to need that as much as possible. Thank you kindly for the donation, my friend. Why don't the Mets just change their name to the Bad News Bears? Why don't you go ask them, my friend? That's a good question. Underwhelming signing, says Dave. I'm indifferent. Biggest takeaway, signing Bader, more lottery tickets to the Mets. Okay, my biggest takeaway is the Mets are punting in 2024. Don't see how you can say otherwise. I will continue to say otherwise, but that's okay. Stern's philosophy of run prevention continues to mold this team. Correct, Anthony. Shout out to you at Subway to Shea. Low risk, high reward, says Dominic. Nice move, no complaints here. To me, it further confirms this season will be lackluster. Okay, I can see that. Are you going to cry about Soto being a former Yank if the Mets sign him next year? Well, considering I don't have an issue at all with the moves the Mets have done pretty much with former Yanks to this point, I don't know why I would cry over landing one of the best bats in baseball. But why don't you let me know, Thomas? How would you feel if the Mets acquired Juan Soto? It's the Mets are building a hell of a Rumble Pony squad. Liam Hendricks for the pen. Liam is coming back from injury, and I think that's going to play a factor into why the Mets do not bring him in. Wardy, is the logo change a real thing, or is it a prank? Regarding what? What logo? Talking about the Mets? Are you talking about the hat? Are you talking about the Mets hat logo that recently changed? The Mets black hat, they went from having the white in it to taking the white out, where now it's just orange and blue. Is that what you're referring to? If so, that seems to be the case. I believe it's still for the Mets black jerseys, but I'm also under the understanding that the Mets are going to probably have a City Connect jersey this year too, so I'm not sure if that plays a factor at all either. Mets played horribly against lefties. At least Bader is competent and plays defense. Can't be mad. Yep, I love the fact that he can actually hit lefties too. That's a big one. Oh man, I heard you say my name and I was like, what did I do now? What's up, Thomas? Long time no see. Happy to have you in here. 936 OPS against lefties this past season. Mic drop. Yep. I love the emoji usage there too. Palms, that's funny. Colors on the hat. Yep. Yeah, that's what I was just explaining. Definitely a bit disappointed. Seems like too much money for the punting of a season 2024. I do not believe the Mets are punting. However, I can understand if the Mets' final moves are 100 Ryu and no DH options. It's not nearly as nice of a look as if you say sign a Justin Turner, a JD Martinez, and, even a Sean Manaea, I would much prefer versus 100 Ryu. Mike Clevenger to an extent as well. Maybe they get creative via trade for a back-end option, because we know David Stearns is heavily active in the trade market. Lots to weigh on that front still. Just because you win the offseason doesn't mean you win the championship. Absolutely. Us Mets fans have learned that the hard way more years than not. This signing is a joke. Hit 7 homers in a hitter-friendly parks. Shake my head. Come on, man. Okay. Can understand that. I'm old enough to remember 2023. Is Fred Wilpon still running the Mets? Stop with that nonsense. I'm not going to acknowledge any shit like that regarding the Wilpons anymore. It's ridiculous. Yes, Fred Wilpon surely would have offered Yamamoto a $325 million contract. Miss me with that bullshit. Sorry, I have no interest in that. No interest in that whatsoever. Any news on Diaz's health? Edwin Diaz is fully healthy. However, his ramp up in spring just might be a little slower than the average guy, because again, he's coming off of a whole year of not pitching, so you need to make sure that you work him in nicely. Wardy, I love your content. I think you were giving Stearns a pass. The reason why I'm giving Stearns a pass, Santos, is the same reason why everyone should. David Stearns adopted an absolute shit show of an organization. Why should we sit here and start to critique the guy when he's just doing exactly what Steve Cohen brought him in to do? You're basically shooting the messenger at that point. David Stearns was a tremendous hire from the beginning, and we shouldn't think otherwise just because the Mets' mindset this entire time has been to have a transitionary and competitive 2024 where they're not going to have World Series aspirations on paper. Why are we going to penalize David Stearns now when if you look at outside of Yamamoto, what did the Mets not do where he should have advocated heavily for? Truthfully, enlighten me. There are very little things that you could say, okay? David Stearns came into a new front office, had to hire a whole new coaching staff. He had to revamp everything right from the jump. To suggest that you're going to have a tremendous thing where everything goes right from the beginning, silly. But secondly, to have hard judgment on David Stearns when he's only a couple months in the job is even further asinine. No, you don't have to be an irrational fan to say this. You have to be a rational fan to say this. And I do not mean this as a slight to anyone, but there's a reason why David Stearns was brought in here. And there's a reason why the Mets' mindset this year, this entire time, is different than what the mindset of 2025 and beyond will be. So that is where I will leave you regarding David Stearns. I'm not gonna sit here and slander the guy. Now, again, if the Mets don't do anything else this offseason, that's a little bit of a different discussion. Then I'm gonna have my reservations and say, why is this happening? I have my concerns, but not where things currently stand. Who's backup catcher if we trade Narvaez? Good question. Good question. I mean, Tomas Nido. He's still in the organization. Pretty sure he's still in the. I know you. You said don't say Nido. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, Nido's a better defender than Omar Narvaez. Has had more clutch hits than Omar Narvaez. So there you go. And Omar Narvaez should probably be making Tomas Nido-esque money, but instead he's making what, $7-8 million a year this year? What makes I believe it was such a great hire? Santos, I love you, my man, but I've explained David Stearns so thoroughly, going back to when the Mets first hired him. So if you want me to explain everything he has done at this point, I highly implore you to just check out previous content. Okay, check out the live show I did. Check out the video I've done when the Mets hired David Stearns. It's what he did during his time as assistant GM with the Houston Astros. It's what he did during his time as a Milwaukee Brewers GM in Pobo with a very limited payroll. We're talking top 5 rotation bullpen for the most part each and every year. We're talking top 5, top 2 defensive club each and every year while he was there. But we're just going to bypass this now because the Mets aren't having this crazy, sexy offseason that us fans were maybe hoping for heading into things. No, we can't be short-sighted in that sense. We have to look at the bigger picture here. So regarding Stearns, that is what I will leave you with. Please check out more previous content. I've explained at great length about him, and it's not me that I don't want to discuss it. I've said it so much already. Watch for sneaky moves that none of us see coming. I mean, let me put it this way: the Mets were heavily in the market for Alex Verdugo, which no one was even thinking about, and they're heavily in the trade market right now for a starter if they don't land in the free agent market. It's an interesting one to evaluate because there are still a lot of question marks that David Stearns will hopefully rectify and answer in the coming days to weeks before this offseason rounds out. And then we head into spring training, which is what is going to be a big spring here in 2024. So Mets fans, that is what I will leave you with. I greatly appreciate everyone so much for chiming in the live show. Thank you all so much for me. Let's see, is it me or Mets fans are the most depressing negative fans out there? They're not. They're some of the most reactionary short term, because I'm a very reactionary fan too. We explained this greatly in our live show yesterday, myself and Casey Stearns. So please, if you want to know more about David Stearns, last night's live show is the best way to explain it. Casey did a great job with me breaking down why everything has happened to the way it has to this point and why the Mets have operated to this point. And for fans, the issue is, this is not the Milwaukee Brewers. So even though we understood at least what the Mets said heading into the season, Mets fans' reactions after seeing what has happened the past 2 off seasons, they want that again. They just want the excitement. And you're not going to get it nearly to the degree that you got the past couple years. So to the average fan that wants excitement in the offseason, it's really bothering you. But that's the reason for it. It's because the Mets the past 2 off seasons have made a ridiculous amount of moves, but it has not amounted to a success level that they were hoping for and paying for. So if that wasn't the case, why should we switch up drastically now with the Mets wanting to have a different and more structured vision. I think that's the right way to go. I don't agree with every decision that they make, but I think that is the right philosophy that they currently have under David Stern. So again, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Love you all to death. We'll either be live again later today or tomorrow or something along those lines. We'll have more consistent content out to round out the rest of the week. But until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. The Mets have officially signed Harrison Bader on a 1-year, $10 million contract. Now we'll see what the Mets have next up their sleeve to make